All right, with the insiders, Darren Dreger, Pierre LeBrun, and Chris Johnston, all of our necks a little sore, guys, because we spent the whole night like this. I don't know what that looked like on TV. I guarantee it was better in person. Pretty nice show here at the Sphere. CJ, often, though, the big story of day one of the draft is what almost happened or what didn't quite happen, and the Montreal Canadiens were in the middle of some of that.
Yeah, we could have had a show at the top end of the draft because the Canadiens had the 5th overall pick on this night, and they were offered multiple opportunities to move that pick. I think they worked through some of those trade conversations. I know that at one point they were tied to a discussion on Rutger McGroarty, the prospect from Winnipeg that we're expecting to be moved at some point here. Not necessarily for the 5th overall pick itself, but ultimately when Ivan Demidov was there at number 5, that stuff went away. There was no way they were going to deal their pick at that point, but certainly wasn't for lack of trying by Kent Hughes, and you wonder if maybe some of those trade conversations pick up when we return for day 2 of the draft.
Well, right, and day 2 often is very busy, as we've learned here historically. So CJ mentions Rutger McGroarty, and he's on the radar for a lot of teams. Clearly, Kevin Cheveldayoff of the Winnipeg Jets did not get a trade offer. That made sense. You have to keep in mind, this prospect was drafted in 2022, 14th overall. So the Winnipeg Jets put themselves in position with a really good player that they considered to be a big part of their future. So there's a level of disappointment in all of this, but maybe Montreal steps up, maybe Minnesota steps up, or another team. Plenty of interest.
Connor Bedard stepping up to make the Chicago Blackhawks first-round pick, Pierre, and there could have potentially have been more. They were also trying to make some moves.
Boy, oh boy, the Chicago Blackhawks were trying to land the 4th overall pick to have 2 of the first 4 picks in this draft. I believe that the Blackhawks think they got pretty close on this with the Columbus Blue Jackets. But once the Blue Jackets knew that they could get their hands on Kane Lindstrom at number 4, game over. They really liked that kid, and they didn't want to make the trade in the end. But the Blackhawks are offering their first-round pick next year unprotected on top of another pick in return for the 4th overall pick. Didn't happen.
Pierre, Dregs, let's get to the Toronto Maple Leafs and the blue line in particular. Brad Treliving, we know the focus is to try and add. We hear names like Tanev and Zadorov specifically. But how rich is that game to sit in on?
Well, and that's the problem for Treliving, is that he'd like to get in that game, but it's not unlimited cap space for the top contenders, certainly not the Toronto Maple Leafs. So if we zero in on Zadorov for just a moment, it's believed that the Vancouver Canucks tried to keep him, but they came in late and they went as high as a $5 million AAV. So it would make a lot of sense that Zadorov knows that he can get that. Can he get it from the Toronto Maple Leafs? I'm told that there are more than 10 teams with considerable interest in Zadorov. The Maple Leafs are among them. They like him for a lot of different reasons. Obviously, there's history with Zadorov and Brad Treliving, but it comes down to a cap situation for the Leafs.
Steven Stamkos, a big story we're following, and a quote from his agent on your Twitter feed today makes it pretty clear what's in store July 1.
Yeah, agent Don Meehan saying that Stamkos will be a free agent on Monday. I will say over the years, I mean, remember Evgeny Malkin announced he was going to market and then he signed. Let's keep that door open. However, the Tampa Bay Lightning do feel that they've gone as far as they can with their salary cap issues and what they've offered Stamkos. The two sides met on Thursday, but they're $1.5 million to $2 million apart on what it would take to get Stamkos to re-sign. Don't think he's being unreasonable. I just think it's tough right now for Tampa to fit it in. There are several teams chomping at the bit to get a shot at Steven Stamkos on Monday.
And when you say $1.5 million to $2 million, that's per year on this contract, right? And so the offer from Tampa is somewhere in the neighborhood of $24 million total. That's on an extended deal. I think Steven Stamkos is going to be able to get that on a shorter contract. And a team I'm really going to focus on here is the Nashville Predators, who I think are quite motivated to try to bring him there. They offer some of the same benefits as living in the Tampa area, and certainly if he hits the open market, I think the Predators are going to be a top suitor for Stamkos.
Let's clean up the day's details with some quick hitters. Patrick Kane and Jack Campbell.
Patrick Kane still in discussions with the Detroit Red Wings, where he spent last season. I think that there's at least a reasonable chance he ends up as a Red Wing. There's been a lot of people connecting him to the Rangers, maybe his hometown Buffalo Sabres, but it sounds like Detroit's still in decent position if they can get an agreement on term there. As for Jack Campbell, the Oilers have sort of solidified their crease for next season with the Pickard extension. They've had some talks, Edmonton has, on moving Campbell to get off his contract. If they don't, the buyout window closes Sunday, and they are willing to use it.
The Calgary Flames and the potential of moving Kadri.
Yeah, I mean, there's speculation out there that Nazem Kadri could be in play, and really he isn't, at least not from Calgary's standpoint, but that doesn't stop clubs from calling Craig Conroy and asking about his availability, because the outside perception is that Calgary is going through a renovation or at least a rebuild. They're not using one of those R words. They're using the word reset. Kadri's okay with that as long as it's not a full teardown. He's got the no-move clause. He likes Calgary. He'd like to stay there. If something changes, he'd consider trade, but they're not looking at that at this point.
Pierre, a potential trade chip in Martin Necas.
Yeah, and we talked about this earlier this week. The Hurricanes had something on the table that they thought they could push across the finish line if they can convince the other team essentially to do it. It involved a pick in the top 15 in tonight's first round. Well, it didn't happen. So back to square one for the Hurricanes, who have a ton of interest in this player, but now there's no time element attached to it. Trade could happen anytime this summer.
All right, that wraps round number one. Not like any of us can go have any Vegas fun on a Friday night, though. Somebody scheduled round two Saturday morning. It gets underway at 8:30 a.m.